Welcome to Geek Salad, a podcast about two guys talking about their passion for anything geek, from the digital world to the not-so-digital world. Now here are your hosts, Randy and Jay A. LaRock.
All right, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Geek Salad. As always, I am Randy, and with me is my number one, Mr. Jose. What's up, brother?
What's up? It actually feels good to not have the WoW addiction anymore, but now it's like transferring over to these other games. And of course, since I don't have any consoles, it's not Red Dead Redemption.
Man, let me tell you, it's good that you brought that up because I'm fighting everything within my being not to go out and get this game, especially seeing like all the videos at like IGN and all my friends that are playing it and talking about it and all that stuff, saying like, oh, it's an amazing game. Like, I'm fighting everything not to buy it because I know what's going to happen is I'll buy it. I'll maybe play 3-4 hours of it, like I did with Grand Theft Auto 5, and then it's going to sit there for my console, and then it's going to release on PC, and then I'm going to trade in the console one and do it and get it on the PC.
Well, sadly, they keep saying they're not going to release it on PC, and then some people said, "Oh, they say that, and then they will." So I don't know. I hope they do.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing right now that PC gamers are in that whole like we hope they are. It's more of we don't know when, if they're going to do it, because when you look at it, like Grand Theft Auto 5 didn't come out on PC till like a year and a half later, but mind you, it came out on PlayStation 3 360 first. A year later came out on PS4. And then like 3-4 months after that, that's when they released it on PC. So, of course, I'm one of those, like, I really hope they don't wait that long to do it. Because it's driving me crazy. And right now, honestly, like the only way I think I would get it on a console would be like, you know, I'm contemplating getting an Xbox One X, and it's like if they do something for like Black Friday where they package it in with one, then I'll get it. But if it's gonna be one of those like, no, you gotta buy, I'm like, no, I'm gonna wait because I have to.
It's crazy because especially hearing console gamers talk about how much fun they have hunting after like a rare animal or cooking or doing all these mundane things that a lot of people in MMOs actually end up starting to complain about. Like, you know, you tell someone who used to play like EverQuest 2 or something, or even World of Warcraft, that, oh, they added 5,000 new crafting recipes and new mobs to go after. And they're going to be like, oh, I don't care about that. What about the end game dungeons? And people are playing Red Dead. They're like, oh, my good. I went and I hunted this awesome grizzly bear the other day, and I got a special, you know, fur. And it's like, wow, console games are now getting addicted to that stuff.
Well, and here's the thing. The things that I find hilarious about that game, at least videos that I've seen, is those like compilations of like things that happen in game that are hilarious.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Like, I think one of the best ones was this one of like, this is like the video game karma coming back to get you. So the video was the player killing, I want to say it was like a deer or something up on a cliff edge. And he starts going through the animation of skinning it, and all of a sudden, a cougar just comes and dives him, hits him, and knocks him off the cliff edge.
Oh, man.
I was like, man, that was so funny. The other thing that I listened to was, I think it was through like Engadget or something like that, or Kotaku, where it was like the haters review of Red Dead Redemption 2, and he goes into like a lot of good points of like what they hate about the game. But one of the things that his like big thing was is like, you know, first or shooting controls on a joystick, and he best put it. He's like, look, shooting with a controller joystick, it's like trying to eat spaghetti with a Phillips screwdriver. And I sat there like, yeah, I could see how that point comes across. And then the other thing that he sat there was he's like going on to this rant. He's like, and don't even get me started on the horses. He's like, these things are motorcycles made out of meat. Oh my God. But it's funny to see this stuff. And it's amazing how alive they made the world. That's the other thing
Yeah.
that I've heard about this. And like the thing that's really funny is that if there are things that people do complain about the game, it's little things like, you know, how long it takes for the skinning animation to go through, like stuff like that, where it's like, okay, like, yeah, it's cool to see that skinning animation one time and see how it looks. But then they're like, after you do it like 100 times, it gets boring. And you're like, all right, now I got to wait 45 seconds for him to go through the whole motion
Yeah.
of the skinning. But like it's the funny thing that you sit there and you talk about that kind of like ties into at least the first game I want to talk about, which is funny. So spoiler alert, guys, this is going to be another video game centric Geek Salad. Is how they're like, now you have to kind of like eat and you have to sit there and do that. And they say like it'll affect you in game. Like if you eat too much, you'll start to get fat. If you don't eat enough, he starts getting really skinny. And the game that I started playing, which I believe I mentioned it last episode, was Fallout 76. So amazingly enough, Bethesda actually added on 2 more betas after the ones that they initially announced. And what's funny is I got to play out of the first 3. I played 2 out of the 3. And when I first started playing it, which was more of last episode, I kind of looked at it in the sense of like, I said, this is not going to be the Fallout for everybody. It's going to disappoint a lot of people. And I still stand behind that. Like, I still do think that a lot of people are going to be disappointed by that game. However, the more I've played the game, the more I've actually enjoyed the game. And the only kind of like the thing about the game is like it still feels like you're playing Fallout 4 to me. But there's no more like, oh, I'll go to this town and see this guy and sell all my stuff. Like now it's all just robot NPCs if there are any. And everybody else is an actual like a person. And I've like watching videos of people talking about Fallout 76. I've picked up on a couple of things that seem like really, really interesting. Like for me, one of the things that I found that was funny is I had to go on a mission to a town to go meet the mayor. Like I got this thing of like, oh, go meet the mayor of Graffinton, I think was the name of the town or something like that. And I'm making my way there, and on the map, I see a building on the map, and I'm like, oh, I wonder what that is. I'm like, oh, it's probably like some sort of like city town center or something like that. I start rolling up on the building, and I get close enough where it identifies the building, and it's like, oh, it's blah, blah, blah state prison. And I'm like, oh, it's a prison. But then I start hearing the doom, doom, doom of something walking around, and I'm like, okay, like my old Fallout memories serve me as those were super mutants because they used to stomp the ground when they walk. Sure enough, I crest a ridge, and a super mutant just turns around. It's like, oh, you're going to die, puny human, and he's like, and we start getting at it. So I start making my way in, and of course, as soon as I start fighting the first super mutant, all the guys that are in the courtyard of the prison start working their way out. So I'm sitting there like just one after the other, just pouring out of the courtyard, and I'm sitting there shooting and drop all the guys on the outside. I'm like, all right, at least I got a decent amount of loot and stuff like that. I'm like, well, I can keep going on, but the old, RPG player in me that used to see that one little treasure chest off in the side, and you said like, damn it, I got to get that treasure chest because that's going to be the like ultimate weapon, decided I'm going to go inside the prison. Yeah. I went in this prison, and this thing was full. I mean, full of super mutants.
Oh, man.
And I was just fighting like I killed everybody. And they had, luckily they had like a gun, a weapon workbench, and the one that lets you create the ammo, which is like the gizmo or something like that. I forgot what they call workbench. But the thing that like I sat there and like, also the more that I've played the game, I've noticed one thing, and that is it really like it emphasizes a lot on you on, hey, you want to like craft your weapons, you want to craft your own armor because it's the best stuff that you can get. However, I'm starting to find, like, I think I've played and I got up to like level 11 or something like that, that it gets really, really difficult to keep your weapons like fixed. Reason being is the big thing that you need to fix, craft, and all that is adhesive. And I am finding I cannot find, I'm going to towns and scouring the towns, going every little which way that I can. And I can't find hardly any adhesive. And it sucks because now that I've I had a 50 cal revolver with a scope on it. That was my kind of like, all right, if I really need to do damage. I had a hunting rifle, like a full-fledged hunting rifle with a reflex scope on it. And I find that like you start fighting these things, and man, your conditions of your weapons start going down pretty quick. And it's like, oh crap, I need adhesive or stuff like that to fix this stuff, and you can't find it.
Yeah.
It got to a point where I started like boosting my guys' thing in strength to start finding a good melee weapon because I'm like, I'm gonna have to switch to it eventually.
Yeah, I'm curious because I got to play like 1.5 betas, and then I just started reading because I just wanted to see what people thought. And I always know that with Fallout, you're going to have people that's going to have a problem because I've seen that with. I mean, as soon as they announced the Fallout 3, there were people that were used to 1 and 2 and they hated 3, and then they had New Vegas and 4 and all that. And people were like, oh, New Vegas is great, 4 is terrible, and this and that. So I already knew automatically that there were going to be a lot of people that didn't like the game and had things to say. And let's face it, whenever there's an MMO of any type, you're going to have the same thing. But looking over YouTubes and reviews, it's really weird because it almost seems like you have a mixture of some people that have genuine concerns, and then you have people that realize that, hey, if I bash on this game, people will watch my podcast or YouTube channel or something like that. And not only do you see the exact same arguments, but then exaggerated, but then people just start pulling out like any old argument, which if you started nitpicking any game like that, then yeah, you could say almost any game sucks. But at the same time, you have the other pushback where people are coming in and acting like it's great, and you're like, okay, are these people being paid or what's going on? Are these fanboys? So I'd like to go more over like the points that they say of contention and things that they don't like, and see, is it something really real or is something that not that big of a deal? Like, is it really worth it to get this game if you're even just slightly interested in the world? And that NPC is the first thing I want to ask about, because lore-wise, it makes sense. For anyone that doesn't know, this is only supposed to be like, what, 20, 25 years after the bombs fell that you come out?
No, it's 300 years.
Really? I thought it was
yeah,
sooner.
It's 300. No, it's 300 after the bombs drop. But you're the first shelter that's essentially opened up. So there's nobody, like there's no people out in the world. That's how they wrote it up. Because remember, this is the whole thing with the thing is that you wake up because it's the tricentennial of people going into the vaults themselves. And people went into the vaults because of the bombs were flying, essentially.
Okay. All right. Well, either way, it makes sense that you're first. And like the vault is supposed to be like the vault that didn't do any weird tests or anything. That's why, it's not like the other Fallouts where it's like, oh, we were doing these kind of experiments with this vault, and this vault has this going on. This was supposed to be like the actual like control vault, just people that come out. At least so far, that's what it seems like.
I think what this one more is this was before they decided like we're gonna start doing these weird experiments and all that. So like this is what they intentionally wanted it to be, where it's like, oh, we're gonna try and save as many people as we can. And then you really like when you start getting, and that's the one thing that's really interesting. And anybody out there that really doesn't know the real like lore behind it, like do a look up on Vault-Tec. Like there's a ton of YouTube videos if you sit there and you look at it, like where people have gotten all the little like in-game stuff that they talk about the different vaults, and they put a video together. And when you see like what Vault-Tec has done, especially like by the time Fallout 4 rolls around, it's like, good God, these people were evil, man. Like they wanted to like, well, you don't know what they were thinking when they did some of the things that they did. And like the few that I remember there was one vault that they put like one guy and like 200 puppets. So it's like a single guy and then the puppets, and then just see how the guy how he would interact.
Wow.
Yeah, and then like when you read the notes and hearing that, like you find out that the guy basically started creating different personalities for the puppets, and he thought they were like actual people. Like he basically went crazy. There was one where it was 199 women and one man in one of the vaults. And of course, it ended up happening where all the women started fighting over who would be the one that would get together with the man to procreate and keep, society going. The one that was really, really, there were two that when you like really look at it, you're like, man, that's kind of messed up. One, they did genetic testing on people, and you find out that's where the super mutants came from. And the other one, they basically sealed people in, but they didn't seal it where the radiation wouldn't get through. So you had one vault where the people thought they were safe, they got radiated, and then that's where you had a bunch of the ghouls come out. And like the crazy part is you find out after the fact there were very few survivors that made it out of that vault, but a lot of the people, the ones especially closest towards the door, became those feral ghouls, and they just started running around killing all the people inside the vault.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, no.
Well, see, that's the thing I'm curious about, because okay, so people says that there's no NPC. So when you go out, for people that didn't play the beta, don't know, you go out, and we're gonna try not to spoil like too much for those of us that got to like a level 10, level 12. But you go out and it's like holotapes, robots, things like that. But here's the thing that I worry about. I think of it like a story. Mm-hmm. And if you know, because I mean, it's one thing if we lived in a bubble and we had no idea about what's going on in the game. But even if you just pick up the game, you're probably going to read somewhere, oh, there's no NPCs. So what I'm worried about is, imagine if you went and there was like a series, and it's like, oh, here's a 7-part series coming to Netflix called Where is Jessica Drew? And, it's like a mystery about trying to find Jessica Drew. So you're like, oh, man, this looks really good. But then you go and you read on Reddit that it says, oh, by the way, Jessica Drew's dead. And you're like, oh. Then you go back and you want to watch this movie, and it looks really good. The production, the writing, everything's great. But in the end, she's dead. So it's like, man, I don't know. I want to watch this. That's the kind of feeling I worry about Fallout 76, where it's like you go and it says, hey, go find, Billy Madison. And you're like, well, I know he's dead because there's no NPCs. Then it's like, oh, try and find this community. Okay, well, I know there's no one there because they said there's no NPCs. So I feel the problem is that takes a big chunk out of it, that you're not going to ever find a person. So every time you have any mission that has to do with finding someone or finding people, then it's going to be like, no. The only way I see this being saved is if they want it to be like that for now. Since we all know it's 32 max people per server, right? Mm-hmm. So that's not that huge, but the map is huge. I assume what they could do is say, oh, well, there's another vault opened, like maybe 2 months later after release, they could open a vault. And then all of a sudden, a tiny town could appear, and now you have NPCs. Mm-hmm. It's not like the engine. The engine's the same engine they've been using for years. So they can implement this at any time. But I just think for this game to continue in the future, we can't be playing 6 months from now and still everyone's an NPC. They're going to have to do something like that. Either going to have to start building mini towns or opening other vaults or something to give us more than that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is they said there is going to be DLC for it, and it is going to be free, so they can, I agree with you, they can absolutely write into the lore like, oh, we opened up Vault 35, and now a new thing pops up on the map, and you go there and oh, look, it's a town of humans that are starting to do it. Now, the thing, like you said, yeah, it's interesting where, like you say, they tell you, oh, go find, Billy Bob or whatever. And initially you're like, oh, I'm going to go find a person. And yeah, you get there and you just see a dude just on a chair and you find his holotape and you hear his story and all that. And that was one of the things that I was like, once I did that a few times, like you say, you're like, oh yeah, they're having me go after these people and there's just nobody going to be there. It's kind of like a bummer. But it is like one of the other complaints that like that kind of ties into as well is people are like, oh, but there's no story to it. And yes and no. Yes, there's no like sequential story that you go through like all the other Fallout games, because let's face facts, the other Fallout games were a single player experience, so you needed to have that sequential story to go through. But I found as you go going places and you find these holotapes, it kind of does give you a bit of a story. And I'm not going to say what I did, but like, it's interesting that you go one spot and you pop in a holotape and you hear this thing of like this person, like, oh, like, we have a chance at surviving and blah, 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 and this and that. And blah, blah, and it's all like cheering, kind of like they have hope of. And then I had like a holotape that it was like, at first the person was like, we're going to do this and blah, 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 blah. And then like by the end of the tape, they're like, you can just hear in their voice, like, okay, I've been here for a week and we're out of food and we're out of water and I have no idea how we're going to survive. And, blah, blah, blah. And then like just start breaking down and crying. You're like, God. And it's like, and it's not a short holotape. It's a pretty long holotape. And you hear from this person go from this, like, we're going to do this and hurrah, to this desperation of like, that's it. We've given up. And it's like, holy crap. Like these people wrote a really good story into it,
And that's why I think that you're eventually going to have some kind of, NPCs, because it's not like they still put the voice acting into the holotapes. So like some people tried to say, oh, is it because they're lazy and they're cheap? And it's like, no, I don't think that's the case, because what's the difference between putting an NPC standing up and talking and a holotape where the person's talking? Because like the holotapes sound just as good as any other game. Like the voice acting sounds good. It's long. It's not like it's 2 sentences and it's it. So like you said, some of these you're finding all these tapes and they're talking and talking and talking. Like this one lady's like giving out recipes and stuff. It's like this old lady. So it's like it's cool. I just think that eventually they're going to have to add that component. But like you said, another part is how much it's up to people to do that. Because I think what happens in like the single player game is you're willing to just sit there and listen to the holotape. Like I remember even in like BioShock and stuff like that, you almost wanted that break. You're like, oh God, thank you. And you'd go sit in the corner somewhere and listen to this tape and you're like, okay, now I'm ready to go. I think what's happening with a lot of people, especially like in beta, like they keep saying, oh, I don't listen to the tapes and I run through. Okay. I did see that sometimes you're playing with friends, and if your friends are not all on the same page, they'll be like, oh, are you still listening to that tape? Or let's go. I know where this is. It's over here. Come on. So you end up now listening to the tape. So it's kind of weird, that dynamic. But unfortunately, it's one of those things where it's kind of still up to you to listen to the tape instead of just run over to the next area. And I think what happens is that when you know that there's other people with you in the world and they're leveling above, they're getting this stuff, they're building, you feel like, oh my God, I got to rush. So when you rush, you're going to pass up some of that story. So you're going to have to make your own balance to say, I'm going to listen to these tapes. I'm going to read the whole what's written. I'm going to go, because that's another thing. Going through the computers, there's still a ton of information.
Oh,
like you'll look at a console and they'll say like, this is the quest, and you'll start reading it. But then there'll be all these other lines. And like, I remember back in other Fallouts, I'd be like, I got to read this because it may open up a quest or something. Nowadays, people are saying, oh, well, I speed through it. I don't look at all those other things. Well, then you can't come back later and say there's no story if you're not going to read through the things. At least it's not like old school Morrowind where there's like 5,000 books that you don't really actually have to read.
Yeah, like to your point with that, like I remember when I finally like went through that jail and cleared out all the super mutants, I made my way up into the warden's office and his computer was on. And I get on this thing and like it has like the warden's log, like a whole bunch of entries and him talking about like stuff that's going on in the jail and blah 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 and this and that, and it was like, man, that's crazy that like they put so much writing into it. But it's like I've enjoyed the time that I play with it. Now, the other big complaint that I've heard from people, and you kind of touched on this, is people are saying like, oh my God, they're still using the same game engine and this and that, and it doesn't look so great and this and that. And the way that I looked at it when I came into this game was, number one, if you really look at what this game was, this was essentially supposed to be a multiplayer add-on to Fallout 4. But when they were working on it, they realized A, it needed way more work than they had time to do to release Fallout 4 on time, so they took it out. And B, it's since Fallout 4's came out to now, they've been working on this just to get it to like work. So they would never have had time to completely write a new engine, because let's face facts, like all the engines that they use in Skyrim and Fallout and all that, those are all in-house engines. They do not license any other engine from anybody else. So for them to have to start from scratch, write a whole new engine to it, and then start implementing all this stuff, like I totally see why it still has the same graphic engine that Fallout 4 had, which in reality, like I think it still looks great. And I don't mind companies using an older engine because it runs great on my computer, you know? So I'm not going to complain about that, you know, just being, oh, it's an older engine. Like I still think it looks great. And that's one of the things that like I've heard a lot of people complain about.
I look for potential, and the thing is that I remember people talking about the difference between the quality of life stuff and then the content, and they're saying that those two together are the most important things. And I think that yes, obviously you'd love to see a better engine, a better look, but then I think about EverQuest 2. Like EverQuest 2 was one of those games where it's like, man, we got to upgrade from EverQuest. And it's true. They had to in a sense. Mm-hmm. But man, the jump that they did and all the problems that they had, because for those that don't know, like EverQuest 2 looked beautiful, but it was very CPU intensive. And this was back in the day when CPUs are still kind of expensive, but they were really expensive back then. But you also need a video card that was good. So sometimes you can play the difference as long as you don't bottleneck yourself. But you could say, all right, I could get a halfway decent CPU and then a little bit better video card, and I'm good for a while. In EverQuest, you had to have the best of both to be able to run any settings. Mm-hmm. So then that hurt a lot of the other game, because when you lowered the settings all the way down, EverQuest 2 looked worse than EverQuest 1. Mm-hmm. So I understand that part. The second thing is the quality of life and lore things. Like one of the complaints that also was added was the whole voice over voice chat thing, and not having a text box, especially for PC gamers. They're so used to an MMO where you type. And I understand that when I was in game, one of the first things that pissed me off is I'm like waking up in this vault or whatever, and I hear some guy, and I guess he's doing a live stream. It must have been a boring live stream, because he's just like, hey, look, there's a toothbrush here. I wonder if I could brush my teeth and blah, blah. And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, I don't want to wake up. Like, it did take me out. It's really weird, because Bethesda comes on and they're talking about how, oh, we don't want to do push to talk. We don't want to do chat because it wants you to be immersed in the game. I do not feel immersed in the game where I'm hearing someone ordering pizza, or a baby crying, or a kid asking his mom for an extra 7 minutes to play. It's like that took it out of me. So it's those quality of life things and adding little things in the future that's going to make or break this game. Like, it's the same thing that I said with Diablo. And we can get into that later, that whole
oh God.
But I always said, one of the things I don't understand with Diablo, the way it's built, you would think to yourself, you know what, every 2 weeks I could release a new mini patch. It could even be one mission. Mm-hmm. Like you could just say, oh, we found a new demon, or we found a new section of hell, and you just tile together a few new tiles and you put that out. You probably could even sell it for like a few bucks or something, and you would have it. But when you're playing months after months after months with the exact same tiles and the exact same game, no one's going to play that. Yeah. And I think you have to be careful with Fallout, where it's like you have the engine there. You know that you could mods, they can do anything. They can do anything. You need to constantly be adding, even if it's just a new holotape where you didn't see one before, and you're like, oh, look, a new holotape. You're going to have to do that constantly, or people are going to leave your game, because it's like, it's going to be way too little content. People are eating up content already.
Mm-hmm. I will say this, though. I went to the northern side of Virginia, where they have those, like, I don't know if you've been up that area where the water park is.
Oh, no, I haven't got that far.
Oh, yeah, dude. So there's like this huge like area around there where it's just like almost like a swamp area, or like it was like a lake, a huge lake, and it's now all irradiated. And oh my Lord, like I had to go to this water park, and of course, where's the water park? Across from this lake. And I'm like, okay, I can either see if I can make my way across the lake, or I have to go around. And then I realized the moment typical Fallout, the moment I started getting in the water, your freaking rads start going up like crazy. And I'm like, okay, either I pump myself full of Radix and then run across the water and hope that there's no creatures in the water, or I have to go around. And I ended up like, screw it, I'm going around. And it sucked because it's like, good God, this is going to turn my trip, which is just a straight shot to the water park in 2 seconds. So like an extra 20 minutes of working my way around this stupid lake, but at the same time, I ended up running into other stuff as I was going around, which was kind of cool. But like the game itself, though, it's a really interesting dynamic where when I first started playing it, I looked at it and I took it all in, and I took what people kind of like said about like, oh, it needs, this or it needs that, and it's on the same engine and all that. And I'm like, all right, set that aside. I'm going to like just go into this game. And at first I started playing it and I was just like, I don't know if I'd actually play it. But then the more I played it, the more I was like, ooh, this is actually kind of fun. Like, I want to keep playing this. But now I'm in that kind of like between this whole thing of having to find all these damn adhesives and this and that and blah, blah. It's like, good God, either these people have to make the weapons degrade a little bit slower, or they got to give more stuff that you could repair. I mean, granted, it's an MMO. Like, don't get me wrong. People, like, monsters drop a ton of stuff. So even if one breaks, you'll still have another one. My only problem is like, I spent resources and time putting a reflex sight onto this gun, and it's great at being able to aim or whatever, but then this thing breaks, and now my next one I have to iron sight it, and it sucks. Like, if I think if they could make it where the stuff that you attach onto the things like the sights and the long barrels, if you could detach them so you can attach them to a different gun when you pick them up, that would make it. I wouldn't mind that, because again, it's an MMO. So as you go along, you're going to be getting monsters are going to drop more powerful weapons that you're going to want to switch to anyways. But I think that would make it at least not as like, not going to say time consuming, but it wouldn't hurt as much, because in reality, if I'm going to get this gun and I'm going to put a long barrel and I'm going to put a sight on it, why would I do that if this thing's going to break on me and then I'm going to replace it with another gun? Like, it would make no sense for me to pick up junk to craft stuff anyways.
It's kind of like balancing the mix between, I want to build this gun, because obviously I know that they want you to build one gun and then you just keep repairing it, and it becomes, oh, I'm running around one gun, because then what happens is on the internet, it's going to say, build this gun, don't build any other gun because everything else sucks except this gun and maybe this melee weapon.
Yeah.
And so they want you to rotate, but at the same time, it's true. I do love crafting. I do love breaking things apart. But at the same time, I don't want to have this scope gun that I put all this work into and it breaks in 5 minutes. Maybe they have to extend it just a little bit longer so it doesn't feel like, oh, I put together this gun. Oh, it broke apart even though I built it with my bare hands, but it breaks after like 5 kills. Like, it can't be that crazy.
And I will say this, at first I thought like, man, like they're going to make it interesting where like ammo's going to be scarce and all that.
Yeah.
Nah. Dude, like I said, I've been using that hunting rifle, which uses 308. I was carrying around 445 rounds of 308. I'm like, I'm never going to run out of ammo, but I'm never going to use all this ammo because all the guns keep breaking on it.
Well, it's funny because someone was talking about that in terms of like PvP, which we haven't even got into yet. But one of the things is that they're saying that's how it kind of like warrants you not to like grief. So for those that don't know, obviously you have 32 other people in there, and you can PvP. But here's the thing: you can set yourself to passive mode, and you have to engage in the PvP for it to take effect. So for those who play like World of Warcraft or something, if someone sneaks up on you and starts shooting you, the bullets do almost no damage. Because I had that happen to me. I was with a group of friends too, so I don't know why this person attempted this, because this person was like the same level, just start shooting me. And I'm looking at my health, it's barely moving.
Right.
And the thing is, this person is blowing their ammo. And this was early on. We're like level 4 to 6, I think it was. We were. So
had to be after 5.
Oh, okay. So I guess it was 6. So they were shooting all these bullets at us, and it's like nothing. You know, I was practically regenerating faster than they were doing damage with their gun. So the thing is that you can do that, but especially at that level, you're gonna not have that many bullets. Your gun's still gonna get messed up. So it wasn't worth it until I turn around and want to actually duel you or fight you. Then it will get back to regular power. So I could see if you go around trying to grief and no one's taking the bait, you could burn through your bullets, wasting 50 bullets to do 5 damage to somebody.
Yeah.
But that was another thing I was going to ask you. Obviously, we have people that we know that are interested in playing this game, but then we're also going to be playing ourselves. Do you think that this is one of those games where you're going to have a lot more fun by yourself with a specific group of friends, or will you be able to have fun if you're just trying to live out there with random strangers on your server?
So this is the thing. So I played the game completely by myself, and I was enjoying it. However, it's meant to be played like they basically are touting it, and from videos that I've seen of people like talking about the game, they're like it's a fun with a group of people that are your friends, because what's cool is they do every so often on the map they'll do events. So like at an airport, let's say like they're basically gonna have like waves of mobs just attacking the airport that you have to defend it off. And it's cool because it gives you like, you go in there and it says, okay, you got a minute to prepare your defenses. So you can actually like, if you control the airport, you can like set up gun turrets or do whatever you want to do and then defend it. And you get a pretty decent amount of stuff out of doing stuff like that. The thing that's really interesting with PvP. Now, one of the things, I was watching a video, it was from PC Gamer. They were talking about the Fallout 76. So this one guy came across this airport and he didn't realize like, oh, this airport, you could claim it. So apparently a player claimed the airport. And the way that they did this also is there's different things throughout the map. Like I saw one that was like a junkyard and you can claim it. And then once you claim it, you can basically, it's just like the, what the hell was the name of it? Where this stupid guy kept sending you to the outposts in Fallout 4. So it basically turns into your own outpost. So you can go in and say, like, I want to edit and build, and you can build whatever you want there. You can build defenses, you can build different things like that. And two things will happen. Number one, every so often, just like in Fallout 4, monsters will attack your outpost that you have to defend it. And number two, if another player comes in, they can sit there and say, like, ooh, I want to claim this. And what will end up happening is it then flags them for PvP against you. And then you have to fight them off to keep your outpost. Now, one of the things that I found funny that this guy was talking about, so he's like, oh, so I was in this airport and I saw a whole bunch of stuff, and it was cool because, like, the neat thing about it is like, let's say I take over this junkyard and I put a weapons bench and I put, all the different crafting stations. Anybody can come along and use them. It's not locked out to me. So he's like, oh, I was going around. He's like, I wanted to fix my weapons and all that. And I'm like, I was trying to find where some of this stuff was. And I found it and I fixed it. And he's like, and I didn't realize that on the airport, there was a control tower. So he went up the control tower and was going to go into the actual tower itself when he realized the door was locked. So he was like, oh, whatever. I got enough skill. He picked the lock on the door. What he didn't know is by him picking the lock on the door, because it belonged to another player, it flagged him for PvP.
Oh, man. So
then he was like, well, and then looking at it, he's like, well, I'm at the top of the clock tower. I can see around completely. So if anybody tries to come after me, I can tell them, because that was the one thing that I didn't notice because I didn't do any of the PvP is once you get flagged for PvP, when you're not PvP, sorry, let me start by saying this. If you bring up the map, you can see on the map where every single player that's in your server is at. The moment you get flagged PvP, you no longer see any of the people. So it's just you. However, on their map, they will see you as a red dot, which means you got a bounty on your head. And the way that it works is the bounty keeps increasing the longer you stay alive. So this guy was saying, well, I'm at the top of the clock tower, or the air tower. I can see the entire airfield. I can see everything around the airport. I'm okay. He's like, I was in a perfect position. However, I did not plan for one thing, and that was I didn't have any food or water. Oh. And the reason being is he had gotten into a big fight against those big monsters. I forgot the name of them. Good Lord.
The Dread Claws?
Yes. So, yeah, the Death Claws. He's like, he had a huge fight with the Death Claw and basically burned through all his food and water to stay alive. So he's like, great, I got to go down and scavenge for food and water. So he climbed down and he starts going through. And all of a sudden, he was in one of the hangars that was closed. and he started to hear people coming around. So he's like, so I knew there was somebody around, but he's like, I didn't know where they were coming from. And what ended up happening is he's like, I have to give it to these people. What they did is one guy came in through a window and was making noise. So he was here looking for this guy. And the moment he had his attention, what he didn't know is the guy had a partner that came in the door behind him, and they basically pinched him and killed him. And he's like, what's cool is once you get killed, that's it. You're not flagged PvP anymore. He's like, he ran out over there. The two guys were still there in the hangar. He gave him a thumbs up. They gave him a thumbs up, and they went on and kept going. And he's like, he found it amazing, the whole tenseness of, oh crap, I hear people, but I don't know where they are, type of like gameplay that you had to defend yourself essentially, you know?
It takes out that thing where if someone griefs you, they can camp your body. Like in EverQuest,
right.
if you were not in EverQuest, in World of Warcraft, if you're on a PvP server when they used to have PvP servers, someone could just camp your body and just keep griefing you. In this case, it's not that. Once you're flagged, it's over. No. And as far as I see, there's always going to be the idiots. But as far as I see, a lot of people, it's like you said, when they see you flagged as PvP, they assume you want a PvP, but then once that's done, it's over. Like I've seen that. Like I think obviously in the beginning days, you're gonna have some people messing around because it's gonna be a lot of people exiting the vault for the first time. But also, since it's 32, unless someone just happens to have like 20 of their friends on that server and decide to take over, I don't think it's gonna be that big of a problem. Plus, you can switch servers. So if it really is that somehow happens, you're on the worst server ever, you could just switch servers and be done with it. But I wanted to ask you, what did you think about overall the open mic and the idea that they might add push to talk and chat? Because there's been a lot of fight like that. It's almost become a console versus PC gamer thing. I think you need both. Yeah. Because I don't think it immerses you to have – because let's just face it, anyone who spends 5 minutes on any type of open voice chat knows that 90% of what's coming out of that voice chat is terrible. That's why Discord, Mumble, TeamSpeak, Ventrilo, all that is still useful because exactly that. We've had open mic and we've had built-in voiceover mic forever. People are still using their own private servers. Bethesda needs to understand why.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I look at it is like anytime I would play, I'd just unplug my mic because I'm like, I don't need people to hear me doing whatever. And it's interesting because, like you say, like I had a mix of me running around in an area, and then like I could hear people running around, and I would think it was a mob, and then all of a sudden, like you just hear somebody like, yeah, I have no idea where they're hiding this thing, blah, blah, blah. Like he was talking with his other thing. And then I actually heard like what you were saying, like it sounded like a guy was like doing a stream where he was just like narrating everything he was doing. And I found it funny because it was like, damn, like that could be annoying. And I could see where a push to talk system would be perfect for that. Like, I understand you want to make it like, hey, this is how it would be if you were in the world, but let's face facts. Like it's not going to be like that. But like my thing with it is I think it's a game that is very interesting. I had a ton of fun with it. There are going to be people that are going to be disappointed with it. And I will say this from a business point of view, Bethesda did the smartest thing where they say like, hey, we're releasing it through our platform thing. You want to get into the beta, you got to buy the game. And guess what? No refunds. So they did the smart thing from a business point of view is throw the beta out there. Somebody could sit there and like, all right, cool. I want to try out this game out before it comes out. They try the game out and go, man, this thing is horrible. They still got their money out of that person. There's going to be people that are going to call foul for that, but let's face facts. They're a business. They have to make money. And if they did that, they are very self-aware that not everybody is going to enjoy the game. They're very self-aware to the point where if you look at their Twitter accounts and even their webpage, they're already putting out there like, look, guys, this is a totally new thing that we're doing. Be patient with us, and we totally understand that not everybody's going to like it. And that, I think, is the best piece of PR that they could have done right now. And let's set the expectation low because there's going to be people that are going to rip that game apart the moment it comes out. I mean, there's people ripping it apart in the beta, like you said, But for me, like, it is a game that I can see myself, like, I'm not gonna pull that like WoW crack, like just be playing it all the time. That like I will play it because I enjoy it. I mean, I love it. Still has the classic like Fallout music. You know, it's great and all
The
that.
humor.
The humor's in it. You know, like it's a fun game. Like I've enjoyed my time with it. The only thing that I really didn't see and I want to see how they implement it is the different factions that they have in the world, because they pretty much only like the only faction I interacted with early on was the first responders.
Yeah.
So I wonder if they're going to make it where you will eventually start doing quests for all the different factions. And then once you get to that point where you meet all the factions, it says like, okay, you got to align yourself with one of them, kind of like how they did in the other Fallout games, where you like, especially Fallout 4, where you met the Brotherhood of Steel and you met the Institute and all that, and eventually they say like, all right, you got to pick one. You know,
I think that in the end, it's going to be one of those things where it's like any other MMO. If you want to be first to get the new items, you know, get the higher levels, see the area of the game, you buy from day one. If you're worried about quality of life, you know, how much content it's going to be, you probably wait a few months and see what happens.
I mean, I'm going to do just like, I mean, hell, I mean, I'm going to do what I've been doing with the beta. Like I'll play it a couple hours here and there. Like I'm not going to be one of these hardcore people that's just going to grind all the way to the top. Because, you know, like you especially have seen it with EverQuest 2 and all that. Those people that just was like, I'm going to play till I max out my thing as fast as possible. And then you get to the end game, and those are the first people that are like, there's no end game content. It's like, dude, you weren't meant to blow through the whole thing without really paying attention to any of the stuff this quickly.
Yeah.
You know? But moving on, since last week, you did fall for you fell into the Call of Duty trap.
Oh Lord, I don't know what. See, you know, it's funny. I was doing well on finances because it was like I wasn't spending a lot of money. I wasn't buying a lot of games. I was like, okay, I'm playing EQ. I mean, I'm playing World of Warcraft. I'm playing some of my other games. Even play a little League of Legends. You know, War Thunder. Even play a little bit of that. But then it was like, okay, everyone's playing this game. I keep seeing my friends logging into Call of Duty. I'm like, all right, let me get this. And, you know, you just start to realize how old you are because you're like, your Twitch factor is just so much lower. Yeah. You jump into, cause I mean, and before that, I wasn't even really playing the last Call of Duty that much. I was playing more Battlefield, which is slower, especially in the, you know, the men versus men, since I wasn't in a tank or a helicopter half the time. And it was like, wow, you start, I started to get some of my skills back, but wow. At first it was like,
and
I felt like I was like 10 times slower. Like I was running in molasses, like one of those bad dreams.
Oh, yeah. And let me tell you, that's the thing that when you look at the last Battlefield 1, that was all about ground warfare because, man, when you had a person in a tank that was good, forget it. They'd massacre people, you know. But my thing with Call of Duty now is I agree with you with that. Like, you realize how crappy your reflexes are when you start playing this. My favorite thing to do is, like, get the drop on somebody and still somehow lose the gunfight. And you're like, how? You know?
I love it. They're turn their back to you or whatever, and you scope up on them, and you're like, bah, 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 and next thing you know, they turn around and go, bah, bah, and you're just like,
my thing
wow.
Is you look at them with their back towards you and you start shooting at them, and it's almost like their face merges through the hair, and all of a sudden they're turned facing you because they turn that fast.
It's like T-1000.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. The other thing that I've realized about that game is as you go unlocking the weapons, like the higher ended weapons that you get, they are way better than the ones that you get at the lower levels because there is a submachine gun that I'm dying to unlock. That when you when you unlock enough or play enough with that thing, the rate of fire mod that you can get for that thing is disgusting. And you double that with the extended clip. Dude, I saw a dude in one of my games get the drop on 3 people. 3. And with one clip, took all 3 people out, rounded the corner, went boop, and healed himself, and then came out and took out 2 more.
Now, I'll say I'm not good with the gun names, which I need to get better with. I'm going to have to just write them down. But I know I saw one, and in the replay, it was the guy who was always killing me. In the replay, you would see him shoot, and it looked like if I was shooting, let's say, 7 rounds per whatever, he was shooting like 50.
Yeah,
I swear it seemed like he was using like hollow points versus my normal bullets too.
Yeah.
Because it was like, it almost sounded like the bullets were going through me harder than my bullets went through him.
Yeah.
I felt like I shot him like 10 times and it did like maybe 40 points of damage. And somehow, even though he shot me 1,000 times, it was really only the first 10 bullets he needed to kill me because it's like there's super bullets.
Yeah, that's the submachine gun. That's the SMG. It's like literally when you play it and you fully unlock it, it unlocks a weapon mod, which basically doubles the rate of fire. So it's already pretty quick to begin with. But when you put that mod into it, it's like it just sprays a ton of bullets out, and it's just a. I mean, it's disgusting. It's a small little SMG, and I'm like, I can't wait to unlock that thing to just play with that one, because man, that thing is disgusting.
And tell people about the whole not leveling up thing, because that I didn't really notice at first when I logged in and we were playing, and I was like, I was just looking at levels, and I was like, oh, okay, these people are like in their 40s, almost 50, and then you see a bunch of 49s. I'm like, that's weird. How come all these people are 49?
So that's the thing that's interesting with that is, like, I don't know what the max level is. I think it's around 50 something or 60, but what's happening is, or it might be 100, I don't know. But like, you have people that I was playing, I think a couple weeks ago with a friend of mine, where there was a guy that may have been max level, but he stayed max level. Like, he didn't prestige to start all over again. Cause he's like, I got all the guns and blah, blah, blah. Cause that's the thing is, if you go back to prestige, you go back to level 1 and then you have to unlock all this stuff again. So they're basically saying that they're like really good players that they should be prestiging, and they're not, and they're just doing it to like kind of like help level up their friends. And it's crazy because you see these guys playing and it's like, good Lord, man, like they're just destroying people. And like my only gripe with the game, and I mentioned this to you, is like they have to fix the balancing in that game. Yeah. Because it will stack up these like teams of people that are really, really good against the rest of the team. And it's like you're playing domination and you're literally, they'll have all 3 points and their whole team is just hovering around where your team spawns. And it's like you can't even, like you spawn dead. And then they're calling in all these attack choppers and this and it's like you might as well not even do anything. It's like, all right, I might as well leave the game because I'm not going to get anything out of this.
Yeah, what I've noticed too is it's even compounded, because it'd be one thing if someone just didn't prestige and they're high level. That sucks as it is, especially when you're mixed in with a bunch of people. Like, it's crazy when I see, level 9, level 10, level 17, level 20. And the next thing you know, the other side is like 39, 40, 45. It's like, but then here's the thing. So you're playing, and then let's say that you're having a halfway decent match. Okay, fine. But what will happen is towards the end of the match, especially if you're playing one of those games where you have to, like domination or hard point or something like that, where you have to control something, what I notice is that these people will wait until towards the end of the match when it's kind of close, or when you switch sides, and then all of a sudden they'll all release their helicopters and UAVs and this and that. And it gets to a point where I would spawn and a missile would hit me. I would spawn and a helicopter would shoot me. So it's not even as if I'm just, you're getting owned by players. No, I don't even get to move. Yeah. And it's like, okay, you can say, get good. Okay, fine, get good. But at some point, when the other team has a whole bunch of just missiles and helicopters, there's no getting good there.
That was the thing that I sat there and I was like, in thinking about it, I'm like, what they need to do is each time a round starts, like everybody starts from scratch, like not carry over all your perks from one round to the next, because I remember I played a game where the other team, they must have been in chat or somehow communicating, but they were killing us. They were good players and all that. They were wrecking us. And all that they would use every so often would be the UAV just to see where we were. And then the next round started and it's like, an attack chopper's coming in. Okay, whatever. One guy had it. Then as soon as somebody shot down the attack chopper, that makes calling another attack chopper. We're like, they literally just had one. And then it was like, there's a sniper's nest coming. Now we have an attack chopper and a sniper's nest coming. And it was just like the whole round, like these guys were one after the other one using their things. And of course, because of the attack chopper, the guy that had the attack chopper, now the attack chopper is sitting there and taking people out. That counts as a kill. So as long as he stays alive, he would rebuild another one and nothing flat. So it was just like the whole second round, we completely got decimated because we couldn't move anywhere.
Yeah. And of course, you have people leaving in the middle of games. It's like you said, if you jump into a game too quick, you already know it's over.
If you go in queue and you insta get into a game, it's like, well, you're gonna end up on the losing team already.
Yeah, you pop in, and next thing you know, it's like, oh, this side has 220. This side has 19. Oh my goodness!
You're like, oh, we got a little bit of a uphill battle.
The game does do that thing where when you lose, if you join, they'll say you do not take a loss because you joined in the middle of a session or something like that. But still, it still hurts your morale.
You gotta get that.
Sometimes people give up, like especially when you're playing one of the actual team matches where you're supposed to capture something, and you join in and you're down by 100 points, and you know you're probably not going to win, but your other team just gives up, and then they start just Of course, you get the toxic Call of Duty players where they're like, "Oh, well, I got a high kill count." Yeah, okay, but you never stood on the hard point, so who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
You're on the other side of the map shooting people. Great, you got a good kill death ratio, but we lost because you don't run to the hard point. Okay.
Yeah, and what's interesting is right before and today, I didn't even realize this. Like I saw a video on it. The one person that I love to reference, Mr. Jim Sterling. So apparently, they patched in microtransactions into the game. And of course, they're using the whole "it's only cosmetic," blah 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 blah, and they're doing the kind of like season pass type thing. But here's the thing that I find interesting is like somebody on Reddit calculated it out because it lets you buy the season pass thing, which gives you a second tier because everybody gets the free one where as you go playing, you earn XP and then you unlock little things like Fortnite. And then they just like Fortnite, they did like, oh, you get the season pass and then you get a second row of stuff. And then you can spend that in-game currency one to go up to the next tier. Somebody calculated out that for you to sit there and say like, I don't want to sit there and grind this stuff. I just want to buy it. It costs $200 to go from level 1 all the way up to the max to get everything. Or if you're going to grind it out time-wise, you have to play for 250 hours. Now, mind you, the thing that's the killer about that is you only have, I think it's like 45 days to do it. So calculate that out for 250 hours in 45 days. How many hours you have to pay?
You become gamer stereotype with the poop sock and the Mountain Dew and the Hot Pockets and everything. That's the only way you're able to do it.
So calculating it out, you essentially have to play 5.5 hours every single day for those 45 days to grind out everything, which is disgusting. But anyways.
So it's a job almost.
It's a job, essentially. Yeah, quit your job and play Call of Duty. But now I know you touched on this earlier, and I know we both wanted to mention this of the events that happened at BlizzCon, and the reactions that people had. Now, from my understanding, when I was looking at this, like people were excited for BlizzCon this year because the rumors started going around that Blizzard was going to make an announcement about Diablo. And people were, of course, like, oh, cool, we're finally going to get some news or they're going to announce Diablo 4. And Blizzard goes on stage and announces a Diablo game called Diablo Immortal for the mobile platforms.
Wah, wah.
Wah, wah. What I found funny about the video was the reaction that people gave. Number one is right away they mentioned this is coming out on iOS and Android, and people were like, huh. And then they started going to a Q&A, and a guy said, are there any plans for this coming out to PC? And the guy who's the lead designer says this is strictly a mobile device, and literally everybody booed in the audience. And what was great is the only reactionary thing that the guys from Blizzard could do is like, do you guys not own a mobile phone? Yes, we own a mobile phone, but we don't want to play Diablo on it.
Which became an Insta meme. As soon as he said, what do you guys don't have phones? It's like, oh, meme time.
Yeah. And then the great thing was like, I think it was like 2 guys later, a guy's like, so my question is like, is this like a really late April Fool's joke or like... So, and the thing about it is, like, in delving a bit deeper into this, like, I don't know if the whole they don't understand why people are upset is just like they're trying to just like brush this off. But the big thing that like in my research and looking at it, the reason why people are upset about it is it's not that it's specifically just a mobile game, is the people that are going to be in control of this Diablo mobile game are a company that basically just make those like free to play, or the freemium games, and they try and like scrounge out as much money as they can out of people. And that's what people feel like this is going to end up happening to Diablo. And I think one of the better things that I remember seeing was somebody said, like, when you look at Blizzard, when it came to their games, they were always innovators. Now they're just becoming followers of everybody else.
And they, of course, blame that on Activision and all that buyout.
Right.
But to be honest with you, I've been with Blizzard since the old RTS days, but I don't think that only evil active Blizzard changed them. I just think that over time, you start to see the market. It's like Nintendo. Nintendo looked at the mobile market and was like, nah, we're good with the DS. And now they're like, well, let's see if this little Mario mobile game does well. And it's the same thing. And
I mean,
I think they were going to head down this road. Maybe Activision sped up the process, but I don't think that you're just going to have this like Puritan group of people that would never want to do microtransactions and get into the mobile market.
Here's my like thing on that. Like, my big thing with that is when it comes down to it, I mean, granted, it's a business. They have to make money, yada, yada, yada. But when you sit there and you look at it, is at the end of the day, they don't care about gamers. Their job is to make money for their investors.
Right.
And that's, I think, the problem that's been happening is, and to bring to your point, look at Nintendo. Nintendo, like, you sit there and you look at every year, like, I kind of look at it and glance it over, like when they have their earnings calls and all that, and they talk about we made X amount of this and X amount of that. And I find it funny because you're talking companies that make billions of dollars a year with these games. Yet they're the first ones that say, like, oh, it costs too much money to make a AAA game. That's BS. If you're making billions of dollars and then you're nickel and diming gamers for these games like Call of Duty and all this stuff, like, eventually we're going to get to the point where we're going to say that's enough, and we're not going to buy your stuff. And then your earnings calls are going to be really scary when your stock goes from up here to down here because you haven't made any money,
Well, see, it's kind of like what happens with like restaurants. You have this idea that, oh, if this restaurant comes out and it does really well, okay, I'm going to go to this restaurant. If all of a sudden they start to lower their quality,
right,
then they might see, well, it's okay because you've been coming to my restaurant for a year. You're going to keep coming.
right.
But then what happens is all these other restaurants open up. I kind of look at the whole gourmet burger revolution where all of a sudden, first it was like you had just Fuddruckers, and all of a sudden it was like Five Guys. Then all of a sudden all these burger places open up saying we have gourmet burgers. But now there's so many out there. It's like, okay, well, if you're cheaper and you have good quality, I'm going to stop going to the big one. And games like not like Fallout, but with all the free-to-play games that you have, like Fortnite, they're just adding another component that you can go to. So like Call of Duty 4, it's like, oh, you can play now Blackout. But it's like, well, I'm fine with Fortnite, or I'm fine with PlayerUnknown. So that's just going to be a little bit less people that's going to go to the big AAA, go to a different AAA. And that's going to just saturate the market because you're not giving us what we want to be loyal to you.
And that's the thing. Like, Jim Sterling makes a good point where he's saying is, they're throwing in this freemium market into a game that people are paying for. And he's like, I can totally understand them putting all these transactions and all that stuff into the game if they gave us the game. But we're paying $60 to get the game, and then they're like, hey, give us more money.
Yeah.
And the way that I looked at it where I found it interesting is, and this is where the point boils down to, is Nintendo had a quarter or a year where they were expected to make X amount of money and they didn't. And they could have sat there and said, okay, we're got to make up this money somehow. All right, let's do these like freemium microtransactions into games. They didn't do that. What did they do? The damn CEO of the company said, you know what? I'm the one responsible for this loss. So guess what? I'm taking a pay cut. and he did that. You will never see any of these CEOs of EA or Activision ever take a pay cut. As a matter of fact, they're going to be like, I want more money. And that's, I think, the thing that is what hurts them. But the problem is that there's those people that no matter what, and they know this. This is the thing that kills me is they know that they can release a Call of Duty every single year and it'll sell. Because there's those people that are like, it's a Call of Duty, I gotta have it. You know? And that's, I think, where eventually it's gonna get to a point where, like you say, you're gonna have a PUBG or somebody that's going to sit there and come out with one of these games and say, hey, guess what, guys? I'll give you the game for free and it'll have a paid loot box system or whatever, but it's all cosmetic. And then that game's going to take off and people are going to be like, oh, hey, I could either pay $60 for Call of Duty or get this one for free and I'm still going to have that choice of paying. You know what? I'll go for the free one.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that, unfortunately, you also have the other side because, as I said, in the restaurant analogy, you may have a person who opens up a new restaurant and says, you know what, I'm going to do things different. But at the same time, you'll have another guy who will open up a restaurant and be like, well, maybe I could just jump on the loot train, and they'll open one just as bad. Because what happens is there's a lot. I didn't realize how many first-person free-to-play shooters there are out there. You know, I started playing some of these ones like Iron Sights and stuff like that. And the problem is that you're thinking, okay, maybe these guys are coming out and trying to say, hey, play our game. We're better than the Activisions of the world. And then you log in, and it's worse. Yeah. You log in, and it's like everything is microtransacted. So then you almost feel like, well, maybe I should go back to Call of Duty because at least it's not that many. So the problem is that someone has to step up. You can't step up and just release like some skin of an Unreal Engine first-person shooter and then be like, oh, you want a new scope? $1. You want a new gun? $3. Because then you're making it worse.
Then it's pay to win, and then that never works.
Right. And on mobile, you see that too much. I mean, you go and you see one game, and next thing you know, you refresh the page, and there's 50 other games, and they're all saying, oh, well, buy this, 99 cents for this, $1 for that, $2 for this. And then it's like you start to think, okay, all games are like that. And that's why whenever someone mentions mobile, people just go, oh, my God. Because it's on mobile, even if you pay for a game, you know you're still going to have to pay more to get it. And if it's free, then you really know you're going to be paying out your butt to be able to do anything well. The only thing that I say that might hurt you is that, yes, while it's true what you say that some games like Madden, Call of Duty, people are just waiting for the next one to come out. I think as people get older, a lot of these game companies are still looking at people as like kids, like everyone's a kid. Yeah. And the thing is that, no, you have people 35, 40, 45 who have been buying games for years. And they remember games like EverQuest 2 when they went free to play, that it was like, oh, if it's free to play, here's the free game and you can buy a few things and you can get the game and then you can play like that. Whereas now it's like, oh, here's a free game, but we're going to nickel dime you for everything. Yeah. Eventually, people are just going to stop buying these games and moving on to other things. But it's a very slow process. And some of these people are just playing. They're playing for the short game. They're not playing for a long game. They know they're going to probably be out as CEOs or whatever within the next 5 years anyway. So grab what they can and then jump out with the golden parachute.
Yeah, and that's the big thing when you sit there and you look at it is they kind of make it seem like, you know, to us we think like, oh, they think that they're kids. They're like, nah, these guys know we're all adults with money, which is why they're nickel and diming us, because they're like, they can afford it, you know? And the other BlizzCon news that I found interesting is that anybody that had a virtual BlizzCon ticket or was at BlizzCon got a chance to demo the World of Warcraft Classic servers. Now, one of the things that I found interesting about this is all the videos of people that jumped into it. And by what they were saying is, I believe the patch that it's supposed to emulate is either 1.01 or 1.1. But there were guys that have been playing World of Warcraft from way back when to now and jumped back on it. And they said, holy crap, it is... a lot of them said, I don't remember it being like this. But then they sit there and they say, like, you know, the problem is that people that are playing it now that are like, ooh, I want to go back and play that. They're like, they're going to be surprised because it has changed a lot. Oh, yeah. Number one, there's no hand holding as far as like it tells you need to kill X things and how it is now where it highlights on the map where you need to go. They're like, there was none of that back then. You had to like read the quest completely and then figure out where you needed to go. It was just like EverQuest. And I was like, I'd be interested, like, and at least the one cool thing that they're doing with that is anybody that has a subscription to WoW, when the classic servers go live, you will have access to that. So that's good on their part, at least. And I'm like tempted just to like jump on, just to like, because I played World of Warcraft when it first came out, like just to go back the nostalgic trip to like see how crazy it was back then. But like there's so many people that are like, just like, they do that whole like dead stare at the camera and go, you are going to be disappointed. Like people like that is like, it is not what you remember it to be,
And I did the same thing with going back, and I played like EverQuest, because it was like, this was several years ago when they released like their 15th expansion or something like that. They're like, oh, try free. And I logged in and I'm like, they made a lot of quality of life improvements in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But man, like comparing that to WoW, it was like so different.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tried one of the private servers where it's like, oh, play EverQuest old school, and private server, and I logged in. I'm like, oh, no way. It's like you walk out and you're getting killed by a rat. There's no quest. There's no one that tells you go kill rats. You just go out and just start killing rats, and you start killing like 50 rats, and you level up like one pill, and you're like, no, I'm not gonna do it. And I think that's what's gonna happen. I think the thing about nostalgia is that a lot of people are putting what their lives were like back then as well. It's not just a game. It's like when people say, oh, you're changing my Transformers, or I hate it so much. It's like, yeah, but are you just remembering Transformers, or are you also remembering that you were a kid and you had free time and you had money and it was safe and it was? If you throw all that onto it too, you're really going to be disappointed. You can't go back. Like, let's say you were in college when World of Warcraft first came out or something like that, and now you're an adult, you have mortgages, kids, and all that. Are you really looking for this game, or are you looking for when you didn't have wife, kids, and all that? Because Blizzard can't help you with that, man. That's completely separate from the game.
Oh, dude. So now it's interesting in that. So, and then mentioning that, like you're saying, like the classic stuff and EverQuest. So there is a channel I follow on YouTube called Nerd Slayer, and he does these videos called like Death of a Game. And he'll go into a lot of these like old MMOs and old games that like, they did production and it went live and then they died. And he'll do ones like games that are not necessarily like not working anymore, but the like player count has dropped dramatically. And he like analyzes the whole thing and all that. And he did one on Dark Age of Camelot, which is the game that I used to play instead of EverQuest. Because I enjoyed
first EverQuest killer.
Let me tell you, the thing that got me from that game was the way that they did PvP, which was PvPvP. So it was 3 realms. You all had to fight over it. And I have to give them, like, when they did Warhammer Online, they did pull that 3-faction thing in again. But they, like, you can tell Warhammer Online was more corporate-y than it was Dark Age of Camelot, And I think that's ultimately why that failed. But Dark Age of Camelot's still going today, and apparently they're going to go switch over to a free-to-play model eventually. But what's really interesting is the guy who was the head designer, essentially the 2 guys that were the head designers, basically broke off and started off their own new company after EA did typical EA that they bought Mythic and then they killed it. They're coming out with a game called Camelot Unchained, which is supposed to be the same kind of like thing where it's going to be PvPvP. Type of thing again, and I'm interested in that game, and I would like to see it. But man, like now that you talk about that, like dude, just watching that video of the Death of a Game of Dark Age of Camelot, I was like, man, I missed that game, man, because it was like so much fun, especially the PvP stuff.
It's like City of Heroes. It's like I love that game.
God,
There's no way I could go back to old school. Like once they made it where you could level up much faster and it was easier to. But man, if you go back into the day where you fight like 10,000 bad guys to barely get a quarter of a level, it's like we can't do that anymore.
Wait a minute.
Most of us can't.
What ruined the game was when they came out with that mission director that you could do, and literally people just made those missions where it was like a rectangular city, and then every 2 blocks it was just like a pile of 30 mobs that you could just kill through and just go up and down the streets doing that. That's what I think killed that game, because I enjoyed like, yes, from classic City of Heroes to right before they released a director, like they fixed a lot of that stuff. And I laugh because I typically, when I play MMOs, will play a DPS. Why? Because, I mean, I'll try my hand at heals, but a lot of the times the heals is a bit complicated. And the only other thing that I've ever enjoyed playing in WoW before they nerfed the crap out of them was the Paladin tank. I used to love my Pally tank. And that's one of the things that, like, City of Heroes, I used to play a defender. I never thought I'd like playing a healer, and I loved playing the healer. And I was a heals with the darkness. So I was the one that would do that, like that AoE that would bring the tentacles out of the ground and just lock them down. And then I'd just sit there and do my AoE heal and then just do the burst heal to the tank whenever the tank needed it. And man, it was just so much fun playing that. And I really, like, he did one of that game, and I was like, man, I really wish like they would release like a private server of that, which apparently I heard at the end of his video he was talking about that there's some people that are trying to get a hold of the files from the servers so that they can release a private server of it.
I think that the weird thing about all these games that we're talking about is it's a mixture of high expectations, and it's also a mixture of the company not understanding the player base. Because as I said with Diablo, I don't even think they had to introduce Diablo 4. They could have just said, you know what? Every month we're going to come out with a mini patch, and we're going to charge a few bucks, but you'll get something, you know. And I think that'd be enough, because every once in a while when the new season start, I'll still have some friends say, hey, you want to come and play a season of Diablo 3? And I'll be like, yeah, I guess I'll play. And of course it gets boring because it's the same thing, and then you walk away. Same thing in Fallout. I think that this can be great, but you're going to have to keep adding things to it. And what I always bring up to make a point is I bring up the DC Universe Online. That game could have been so great because right from level 1, like from anyone that didn't play it, the idea was basically there was like this attack, and Lex Luthor.
Brainiac,
it's like all these heroes were going to be depowered and everything. So what they did is they brought in like all these heroes, and there was like some kind of nanites or something like that, which allowed you to be kind of like on par with everyone else. But then it's like this big fight between all these factions. So like right from the start, you're fighting there with, you know, Lex Luthor, and Superman is right there. So that was cool. Yeah. And then sometimes you'd have missions where you're going to go help Supergirl, and at the end they'd have cutscenes and all that. But then what would happen is like it's like they only built that for the first 20, 30 levels. And then after that, you notice any voiceover or anything that was gone. Any kind of cutscenes was missing. You weren't fighting along anyone that was big anymore. And it was like, okay, go do Batcave A, Batcave B, and repeat. Okay, here's your daily quest. And it was too quick, and you're just sitting there waiting for the next thing. You can't have it where you have a nice contained mission, and it was put together so well, and then you're left after that. It's like, I remember some of these games where, especially before voiceover became more prevalent in games, you'd walk in, and the guy would talk to you. Oh, you need to go here, and you'd go there, and you talk to this guy, you talk to this guy. After the first city, no one talks to you anymore. It's all text. And it's just that you feel gypped because you're like, wait a minute, you were talking to me. There were cutscenes. It was beautiful. And now everything is.
Actually, I remember what it would do is it would sit there and be like, you know, oh, blah, 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 blah. And then you get to like the next city or two cities over. It's like, hello, stranger. That's literally all you got. It was like, really?
And they don't understand. You feel that loss, and all of a sudden you don't want to play the game anymore because you're like, man, I missed the voiceover, I missed the cutscenes, I missed the feel of it, and now it's like, nope, here you go. You know what it reminds me of? Old school Final Fantasy, where if you're playing Final Fantasy and it's like, oh, this is a good story. Then you get to the point where it's like, okay, go into the world and do what you need to do. And all of a sudden, when you go out into the world, since you can go to different things and do different side quests, it's so much different because they're like, now you go and the side quests are much more boring. They're much more cookie cutter, except they might be like one side quest that's actually pretty decent that they put a little bit of production into. The rest of it is just boring. And that's like people you really notice that nowadays. You know, even with TV shows, you start off like the pilot. Oh my God, there's ships and flies and explosions. You're like, this could be a really good show. And then for the next, 11 episodes, they're in a bunker. And you're like, oh, they blew all their production on that first episode. Now they're in a bunker for the rest of the season because we noticed this, guys. You can't do this to us anymore.
And that's the thing that I feel is why Fallout Immortal has had the amount of, or not Fallout, Diablo Immortal has had the fallout that it's had, is it's not Blizzard that's controlling the game and doing the content. It's this other company.
Yeah.
And that other company has a reputation for really nickel and diming their games. So that's I feel why they're getting such a backlash over it. And the thing that amazes me about it is, like you said, like they're seeing these people have the backlash and they're like, why are they backlashing? It's a Diablo game. It's like, no, you've basically taken the Diablo skin and put it over a dead person and you've reanimated the dead person. Like, it's not the same thing.
And even worse than that, everyone talked about how innovative that Blizzard was. Like, oh, they came out with this, they did that. The problem with phone games is load up Google Apps or the iPhone store and just look for like Dungeon RPG or Diablo-like game. There's 50 of them already. Mm-hmm. And some look really good and they have names that you don't even know. Like Magic Dungeon something. And you're like, like I played a game the other day that looks just like Diablo. I don't even remember what it's called. It's called like Dungeon Evil or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the exact same thing. Yeah. So really, what are you going to bring just coming out Diablo Immortal? Like if it looks just like Diablo but on a phone, that's not going to be like, oh my God, I want to play that. No, when there's 50 other games like that already, you're coming late to the party. It's like with Mario Run. Sure, it's Mario and it's cool, but at the same time, we've already had 50 other Run games before yours. Now Sonic's like, oh, I'm going to come out with Sonic Run. Okay, it's the exact same Run game, but it's Sonic instead of random guy. Yeah. For some people, that's enough. It's like, oh, it's Sonic now. It's Mario now. It's fun. For other people, if you're not innovating enough, it's just Run clone number 2, game. Dungeon clone number 3, League of Legends clone number 50. Like that's not going to draw in enough people. I don't think it's going to draw in enough people.
Yeah, and that's what I feel like. It's they're man, it's like they're trying to do this whole thing, and like we said, it's a Diablo skin over like one of the 50 clones that's out there, and I don't think it's gonna work, but we'll see. Like when it comes down to it, like it's gonna come down to it when it launches. We'll see what happens, and if people are smart, nobody's gonna touch it, and it's gonna flop, and then they're gonna realize like, okay, that was a mistake. We should have put,
Well, just considering how much hate that the 3 games we talked about, there's hate on all of them. Mm-hmm. There's hate for Fallout, there's hate for Call of Duty, and there's hate for Immortal. Yeah. But if you notice, the only ones that are really going out and changing reviews or deleting things is Blizzard Activision.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Because if you go read the internet, especially Reddit, you see they're deleting reviews, they're changing the comments, they're removing and reloading, uploading the trailers on YouTube to hide the bad comments. You're not seeing that with the other 2 games that are receiving bad press. But Activision is like, no, you can't. That's just going to make it worse.
Yeah, Immortal was the one that they had, I think, on one of the trailer, like 250,000 dislikes, and they removed the video and then re-added it back in, and it was like climbing back up there again.
Yeah. I mean, guys, again, you don't understand gamers. You don't understand YouTubers. If you do that, it's going to be worse because maybe your ratio is still bad, but if you delete it and re-upload it, people are going to brigade just to download it. Mm-hmm. I mean, to downvote it. So.
And I will say this, for me, Call of Duty's got about another, half a week before Battlefield 5 comes out, and then I'm never probably going to touch Call of Duty. Maybe for Blackout I will, but that's about it.
I swear, you're making me so broke this year. I'm just gonna have to end up just staying in the house,
dude.
Because it's like with all these games I'm buying.
Let me tell you, I hold, and because we've been going on forever on this show, which is hilarious because we never do. But the thing that made me laugh is when EA started. Like, I'm the type of person where I don't understand where EA's pitch for Battlefield 5 kind of like what they were thinking early on. And here's why I say that. Like the stuff that they showed, everybody would view it and say the same thing. Like, that's interesting, but show us gameplay. And then they started showing gameplay, but then it was still kind of like, like, yeah, you're showing gameplay, but you're not really highlighting what you really should. And I think the thing that compounded this is every single YouTuber, reviewer, or whatever that got to see the game behind closed doors kept saying the same thing, which was, we don't know what the heck EA is doing, but they're not showing you guys how this game really is. And I sat there and completely agreed with them the moment I played the Battlefield 5 beta. Because when I played it and got into it and started playing it, I mean, granted, it was a kind of glitchy, kind of buggy mess that it was. But man, when you looked at what I played through and I compared it to the videos that they showed, I sat there and scratched my head going, what are these guys trying to, like, how are they marketing this? Because they were marketing it completely off the ball.
Well, I never got to see the beta. Briefly, what was it like?
So what they basically did was they took the better parts of Battlefield 1. So the gunplay and all that was, they completely changed it. So that was one of the things that people used to complain about Battlefield 1, because you had that quote unquote sweet spot for the guns where the person had to be an X amount of distance away to do the right amount of damage. They took that away, which was great. They stayed focused on like man combat and not something like the vehicles still do help out a lot, but it's not like the swing that it is for Battlefield 1. But it was like very, like it was good paced. Like it wasn't super fast paced and it wasn't super slow. The only thing that was kind of weird on it, and EA even already said like, yeah, we've already addressed that, was the whole like you only started with X amount of ammo and you had to go and pick up ammo from other people and stuff. And even the health kits, like they've addressed the thing where everybody's going to start with a health kit so you can heal yourself with it. But then like the medics will have to toss you out a health kit or put down a little bag and stuff like that and pick up. What's really interesting with it is, even though it was kind of broken how much ammo you had, when you got into a fight with somebody, you really had to like make every bullet count because you had such little ammo that you started off with. So that was one of the things that I found interesting about the game itself. Now, when you look at like how they were kind of like pitching this game, it was like, oh, it's a great single player experience, and look, there's women in it, and there's this and there's that, and blah, blah, blah. But they didn't really like. They talked about the arbitration system and how you start with lower ammo, but they didn't really show it, and that was, I think, one of the big things. And I found more and more where you had people playing the beta that they were streaming, and they said like, this is how the game is. A lot of people were like, damn, that actually looks like it's a really good game, you know. Like the destruction system that they put in it, amazing. Like I think one of the craziest things I saw was we were in the map where it's like a town, part of a town that's partially destroyed, but it's a snow level, and somebody called in a care package thing, and the care package ended up actually landing because he threw it inside the house by mistake. It landed on the roof of the house. What was neat is the roof had snow on it. The moment the care package hit the roof, all the snow on the roof slid off the roof, and then the care package slid with the snow, and then it fell onto the ground. And I was like, that is unbelievable. Like that little bit of detail, something like that, was super cool, you know? And when I also found out the hard way, don't stand under a care package when it's coming down because it will crush you. Learned that the hard way too. But it was like neat stuff like that I was just like, man, it's like that's the type of stuff that I love about games, is those little tiny details that they put in, which is funny because the little tiny details are what people complain about Red Dead Redemption 2, that they made it too much details. But again, that's one of those things that's neither here nor there. But it's neat to see like these developers do stuff like that, you know? I mean, hell, even like Battlefield 1, where you like dive down into the mud and you stand up and you can see the mud on the gun and all that. And then if it's raining and you're running, you'll see the gun start cleaning itself off and stuff like that. Like that's crazy amount of detail that they put into that. But yeah, like I'm looking forward to it. It's
gonna be a crazy holiday season, man.
Oh, dude. Like I said, these game companies are killing us. They're making October and November be like, oh, I gotta buy this stuff. Okay, I guess I won't eat for 2 months.
Yeah, seriously. No more date nights.
Yeah, I could give up food.
Like, what were we doing? You like your girl asks you, "What were you doing for a date night?" Well, you have a choice: Fallout, Call of Duty.
You could watch me play Fallout or Call of Duty. Oh man, but yeah, like it's gonna be an interesting to see like these next couple of weeks with Fallout and Battlefield coming out. Which I will say, smart move on them to move it to a month later. Because honestly, I think if it would have come out last month, EA would have been crying. Them CEOs were like, "We didn't make any money." I still, on a last point before we do the sign off, I will say this: I laughed that in a world where companies come out with video games and they make $500 million and they're like, "Oh, it undersold." Are you kidding me? You still made $500 million. It's like, Jesus, man, come on. Give
Those
me
bonuses, man. Well, it's like anything else. It's like those restaurants. I working in the restaurant industry for a little while. I learned that you get bonuses if you cut things. So it's like if no one ever has to work overtime, you get a bonus for that. If you have a lower overall food usage, you get a bonus for that. So that's the problem. All these incentives. It's not even for good work. It's about how much can you cut and bleed your own workers in the product. So that's what happens. If it's like, if you sell this amount, but then you sell these DLCs and you sell this, that's where everyone gets their bonuses. So that's why you end up getting all these problems.
That's a Randy's rant for you don't get the show for another time. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, guys, we appreciate any comments. Click on that subscribe button, leave comments in below, tell us what you like, what you don't like. As always, me and Randy, your host today. Thank you guys for coming. As with me always, Jose. Always a pleasure to have you on with us.
Yeah. Next time I'll be in debt and more addicted to something.
Exactly.
What will my next addiction be? Tune in next time to find out.
I was about to say, so you probably won't see us for a good month and a half because we'll be busy playing too much stuff. But seriously, guys, we love your comments and those views. So feel free to leave any comments on what you like, don't like. Give us any suggestions as well. But until next time, guys, keep on gaming. Peace.
Peace.